Hi, welcome back to Spiritual Compass with me, Gary Guerrier. Pleasure having you. Please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you know when we have a new podcast out. And please leave a comment. Let me know what you want to talk about and if you like the podcast. Today's guest is really special. I have Dr. Miachael Whitman. He's brilliant. He wrote an amazing book. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thank you so much, Gary. I'm glad to be here with you and talk, and I love your show already, the ones I've seen, so I'm happy to be part of it.
Thank you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been in practice over 20 years in Southern California, mostly Beverly Hills. I work with men, women, children, teens.
Right.
Also work with athletes. And so,
Nice.
I have a private practice for quite some time, and I supervise intern therapists there too.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thanks.
Wow, that's great. Today I'd like to talk about the psychology of men,
Okay.
right? Which I think it's very important. I actually even had a comment that someone wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
So why don't you tell me a little bit of your idea of what you think?
Well, I think this is a huge topic. I'm glad we're talking about it because there's been a lot of help for women in the last 50, 60 years to pull them up into society. And
Right.
it's been really good for them to be more successful, more
Correct.
finances, more power. But men haven't had the empathy and support. There haven't been the same push to keep men going. And so men have fallen behind in some really important ways. And really one of them is mental health. So a lot of people don't know that men commit suicide three to four times the rate as women.
What?
Yeah, so we're really struggling in a lot of important ways. And so I really think part of my practice is helping men, and I've started a men's group, and I know you're into men's groups.
Right.
So we really want men to get the support too. It's not men against women, but I'm pro both, of course.
Of course. I mean, I'm pro women. I grew up with 6 sisters, so
Yeah.
I'm already pro women to begin with.
Yeah.
But I did notice that growing up, right, there was a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Like what?
Like if my sister would fall down and hurt her knee and it was bleeding, right? She got special care. Oh no, you have a boo-boo. It's okay, we're gonna fix the empathy, put a Band-Aid on it. It's gonna be all right. Don't worry. Where I fell down, right? It was like, be strong. My father was like, be strong, be a man, don't cry. So it kind of taught me to hide my emotion, right?
So the sister could be vulnerable and hurting, and you weren't supposed to be.
No.
What a message.
Right. So it taught me to suppress my feelings.
Right. So that's really where people like men, you're a very masculine guy, Gary, from what I know about you.
Right.
And so people think, oh, he's strong, he doesn't have any problems. But masculine men, too, need a place to talk. And if you grew up with that kind of environment, or in sports like football, where it's a very macho culture, or, a lot of parts of this society are very macho.
Right.
And, but if you go to a therapist, you go to a men's group, you go to a 12-step group, men can learn that, hey, I'm human too. I need to talk about my feelings. It's important for my mental health. It's important for my physical health to get out my emotions and express myself in that way too.
Right, a way of being vulnerable.
A way of being vulnerable, which is powerful, because actually it's not weakness. It's power to express your feelings. It's weakness if you play the victim too much,
Right.
And are trying to manipulate the crowd with a kind of a not direct way.
Right.
But it's very powerful to say, this is how I feel right now, and I need to talk.
Right.
That takes strength.
Right, and I think one of the hardest things for men to do is to say, I'm hurt, you hurt my feelings.
Right. We're not supposed to do that.
No, because I played football and you'd be ridiculed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Dude, you're a softie, you're weak, or you're a crybaby.
Yeah.
I think that's hurtful, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because there's this concept in this culture which I think is concerning called toxic masculinity. And there can be a element of male behavior that's toxic or too aggressive or inappropriate. And so I get what they're getting at. But there's a lot of masculine traditional qualities that we can retain that are great. Being strong, sometimes being stoic and control, discipline.
Protective.
Protecting. We have these great core things, and then we can be more integrate the feminine traditional qualities. being nurturing, being empathic, being vulnerable. Those are traditional feminine qualities.
Right.
And so men and women need to incorporate both,
Right.
because we all have some of both, and to honor that makes somebody more integrated.
Right.
And it's something that I've noticed about you is you're very masculine, but you can be very vulnerable. And so you're very well
Right.
integrated, and I think that draws people to you and makes you live more fully from what I know about you.
I think it's emotional sense for men.
Mm-hmm.
We're not usually, apt to talk about emotions.
Right.
We're apt to talk about everything else but emotion.
Right.
Do you know? And
It's true.
you writing the book, and what's the name of it?
Psychological analysis of tennis.
Psychological analysis of tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually what men talk about.
Yeah. So I mean, it's about really emotions though, because to perform optimally at anything, you need to be able to handle your emotions.
Right.
And so I use tennis as the larger topic,
Right.
but it's really about the stuff we're talking about is how do you communicate on the court, off the court? How do you take care of yourself? How do you forgive yourself when you make mistakes in sports or in life? Because we men often internalize that critic. If we had a critical parent or two, then we're too hard on ourselves.
Right.
And so we also need to be forgiving of ourselves. So I talk about that in the book too, because you see a great athlete, like I talk about Bjorn Borg, he makes a mistake and he doesn't beat himself up, he just goes on.
Right.
And
Move
so
on to the next one.
Yeah, that's that stoic quality that's great that we can tap into, men and women, of really being in the moment and forgetting about your past mistakes.
So do you think it's fear that men don't talk about emotions? That we usually communicate with either sports or, well, I had a great golf game. Oh,
Right.
The baseball game was amazing.
Yeah.
But nothing emotional.
Right.
Well,
there's a couple things that you made me think of. One is our accepted emotion is anger. So if a guy's angry, it's like, okay, you get it, he's angry.
Right.
That's a normal emotion. But underneath anger is usually hurt.
Right.
So as a therapist, I try to see, well, what was underneath that angry feeling you had when that person, said that to you? Hurt, probably, pain. And so that can be more of a challenge, but very important to access, is what's underneath your anger. But as men, and same with depression, men get depressed too, but it can look like anger, irritability, lashing out.
Right.
Underneath that, they might be depressed. They might be hurting quite a bit.
Right.
So that's what I think I try to help people with, is saying, what are you really feeling besides anger?
So what would be best for men to work on, right, as far as gaining that strength to be emotional and vulnerable?
It's a great question. Well, one is it's okay to ask for help. More than okay, it's important to ask for help. So that's not a sign of weakness, that's a sign of strength. Like I said, whether it's a therapist or a group or whatever, reach out for help. The problem with suicide is obviously it's too final.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a solution to your pain, but then that's it.
Right.
So, get talking to people.
Right.
And so, it's something where little girls talk to each other about other things like feelings.
Girls talk all the time, and
Yeah.
that's the beauty about being raised with sisters.
Yeah.
They used to make me talk all the time.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, they'd be like, talk. But what I realized in that whole process, it started giving me a level of comfortability to talk.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was easier to talk to my sisters. And, when I attempted to talk to another male figure, it wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
But I realized that if you can't talk to a male in the proper way and vulnerable way, then change the person you're talking to.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. I mean, because I think men seek real connection too. We're human too. We want emotional intimacy with men, but you're not supposed to say that. But
right.
But we need that too. Like if you just only talk about sports and hanging out and golf and this or that's superficial with your buddies, you're left kind of feeling like sort of empty.
Right.
And so I've talked to you before about if you take, let's say, a 55-year-old man who's divorced with kids, really tough spot to be in, went through a divorce, kids, all this stuff.
Right.
Now he's left with, how do I get emotional intimacy? Because 99% of it came with my partner. Whereas the woman says, oh, I have 5 girlfriends. We can talk about our feelings, cry, hug, go take a trip to Israel or Europe, and we're gonna have a good old month. Whereas the guy's like, none of my friends want to hear about any of that crap.
Right.
I just got to stuff that and move on.
Right. Or they're like, oh, come on, just move on. Just get another one. Oh, this, that, whatever.
Yeah, let's go for a beer.
Let's go for a beer. I'll wash it all over.
You know, so that can really leave that group in trouble. So actually the highest rate of suicide is men, I believe, like 45 to 65 white males, actually.
Wow.
And so that they don't know exactly why that is, but it also may be part of the white culture is also, white male culture is also less open to sharing, you know, even more so. I mean, that's one theory.
I mean, honestly, it's all cultures, because in my culture, they don't talk about it. You know, they can get angry, but we don't talk about deep issues and vulnerability and hurt and what it was like growing up. No one ever talks about the historical part of it, right? I believe that, you know, all emotions, they all have a seat in the car. They're just not allowed to drive, right? But you have to let them in the car. You have to, you know, be knowledgeable of your feelings and your emotions, because they are important.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you grew up with 6 women. That's a real interesting spot to be in.
Right.
And I can see how it shaped you in some really important ways. And so, but then the other side of you is that you became like a football player and these other sort of traditional male occupations and hobbies. So I'm kind of interested in how you had both sides growing up, and how did you kind of make sense out of that?
Well, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and you had to be strong, or else you were going to definitely get beat up and taken advantage of. Yeah. And I learned at an early age that, you know, after getting beat up and after being soft, because I was with my sisters as per society, that I was going to try to be stronger. But even with all the manly activities that I did, right, it came from a place of vulnerability and hurt that I wanted to protect myself. That's where it really came from. Yeah. And what I want, you know, people to know is you can be vulnerable and still have strength. Right. You can have fear and acknowledge that you're hurt, and still be strong. Yeah. So.
You know, I see you as a leader type, and I think part of that is you have a natural empathy for others. Right. And so they did these studies of male chimpanzees, alpha males.
Really?
Yeah. And so what they found was, you might think, oh, that's the biggest, baddest chimp. He runs the troop. He gets access to the female chimps, which is true. And, you know, it's sort of like, okay, you get it. But it's not the biggest, baddest chimp that's the leader of the troop. It's the one who is able to lead with some empathy and get people's needs met. And so he has that side of it. He is tough, but he's not necessarily the biggest one. He has that ability to lead and read the group and also stay popular.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, because otherwise they could just take 2 or 3 of them and say, screw this guy, let's jump him even if he's big, and we'll get him out of there. So they also have to be liked and popular as well as a strong leader. And so I think that's a real important part of being a leader too, is having empathy for others and not just pure strength and aggression. Right. You know? Right. So it'll help you in different aspects of your life to get to know yourself and your feelings too, and actually make you a stronger leader if you want that route, which I think is generally a healthy place to be for men. Wow. You know, because if we're not more aggressive, but if we're more dominant, it's actually good on our nervous system. If we're in positions of leadership, it's good for us. It's our natural desire to rise up as far as we can in hierarchies.
Right. And plus with all this emotion, it's going to get the connectivity between men and women closer.
Great point. Great point. Because women need strong men, but that can also be vulnerable. Right. You know, so that they can connect. That's so you said it just right.
Oh, wow. Michael, I have to tell you, thank you so much.
We have to stop?
Coming.
I'm just getting going here, Gary. We're just getting on a roll here.
Thank you so much for joining my podcast today. It was just absolutely brilliant and helpful, and I hope that a lot of people got a lot from it today. Thank you so much for joining my podcast. This is Spiritual Compass. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. And until next time, I'm Gary Guerrier. Thank you so much.
Thank you.